Because why? In the future, God is going to use us in a way to teach other people and to comfort those who are also suffering. Secondly, the Bible tells us that God uses pain lovingly to discipline His children. For who's good? For God's good? No. I mean, that will make Him a what? Sadist, right? That's the word, huh? Sadist, yeah. No. It's for our own good. God disciplines us. And I think maybe we should think of this. Maybe first let me read this passage to you. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 10 to 11. The writer says, "Our fathers disciplined us for a little while as they thought best. But God disciplines us for our good, that we may share in His holiness. No discipline seems pleasant at that time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it." It's so that we may know the right path to take. Now, firstly, I want us to note that there is a difference between punishment and discipline. Sometimes we make a difference of thinking the other. Sometimes we make the mistake of thinking they are the same. Actually, they are not. No, punishment is justice for misdeeds of your past. Right? Somebody gets caught for stealing something or what, and he goes to jail. That's justice. But discipline is the loving way that we correct someone we love so that their future will be better for them, so that they may grow in character, they may become the people that you want them to be. No, the worst thing actually any parent can do is not to correct the child's bad character. That's why parents sometimes they do something they don't like and the child don't like. Right? But the purpose is to protect the child from harm by going the wrong way. You know, when I was in secondary school, my mother used to beat me. Yeah, beat me actually. She would beat me with a stick because she wanted to prevent me from hanging out with the neighborhood kids. Now, I hated being beaten, and so I rebelled. I was a rebel, yeah. I continued to hang out with them, and in the end, I started taking drugs. And one day I got caught, right? When I got caught just before that morning, I was going to report to the police station, and they were going to send me to prison. I told her, "Don't worry, And I said, "Don't worry." She sat down and she cried. She cried. Then she said these words to me. She said, "No, that's why I never wanted you to go out and mix with all these boys. Because every time you went out, I don't know whether you will come back home or not." See, she knew the big picture. We lived in a very bad neighborhood. The disciplining was her way of preventing me from learning the bad habits of the people in the neighborhood. There were gangs and all this. It was correction meant for my good, but I didn't see it then. See, that's how it applies when God disciplines us as well. My mother was imperfect in wisdom, that's true. But God is perfect in His wisdom and in His love for us. So He knows what is best, and He corrects us so that we can grow to be the children of a loving Heavenly Father, the children that we really should be, that will bring honor to our Father's name. Thirdly, God can also accomplish something positive out of the negatives of our life. In Romans chapter 8, verse 28, Paul wrote this, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose." In other words, God takes all the bad circumstances of our life and He causes good to emerge as we walk in faith. This actually shows that God is sovereign over everything that there is. Sovereign and also loving at the same time. I think the story of Joseph is the best example to describe this, where God draws positives out of the negatives of Joseph's life. Imagine he went through terrible suffering, right? He was sold into slavery by his brothers, and then he got falsely accused of molest by the Potiphar's wife, and he was put in jail on trumped up charges. then finally, God was still with him, and God raised him up, and he was put in a position of great authority where he saved many lives when a famine struck the world at that time. So his brothers came one day when he was the prime minister of Egypt, and they asked him for forgiveness. And Joseph said this in Genesis chapter 50 verse 20. He said, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." You know, Genesis 50 verse 20 is actually the Old Testament equivalent of Romans 8:28, which I just now read, Romans 8:28. See, God has promised to take whatever pain you are experiencing, and He will bring good out of it. Don't doubt that, no? That God can take all the negative circumstances of your life and mine, and He can bring good out of it. I think the third point is my most comforting. There will be an end to suffering. It will end someday. You know, I get called to many critical illness situations, and many times people talk to me about their crisis in their very lives. Things like their bad bosses, evil colleagues, unfair school teachers, school bullies, unfair situations of life. All these things, these are troubling situations actually in life, especially when in those circumstances, the person, the victim that is has not done anything wrong. That is, he is blameless. I'm sure some of you have encountered some of these situations, or maybe you are also, you have been involved in this kind of situation. You don't deserve to get such unfair treatment, but it happens. As I have said earlier, you know, we live in a world where people are unfair and mean at times. No? They can be very, very unjust. But you know, the good thing is the day is coming when all these things will cease, right? And injustice will be judged. But people ask, you know, sometimes people ask me when I tell them, if God is powerful and able to eradicate evil and suffering, why doesn't He do it? Why doesn't He do it now? My answer is simply this: no, just because He hasn't done it does not mean He will not do it. You know, you and I don't know, maybe me. You know, I read a lot of adventure books. I watch a lot of movies about adventures. And there is always, I don't know whether you notice it, there is always a pivotal moment. There's always a pivotal moments where the bad guy seems to have the upper hand and evil seems just about to succeed, and all the bad guys are going to lose. Right? You see Divergent. There was a time test, and 4 were captives, while Erudite and Dauntless were about to wipe out abnegation and take over. Did I spoil the movie for you? Then in The Hobbit, remember the scene Gandalf and company were surrounded by the wargs and the orcs, and Thorin Oakenshield was about to be killed. Remember Katniss Everdeen in the Hunger Games? She was trapped in a tree, and below were all these people waiting for her to fall down so that they could kill her. No, imagine, okay, what would have happened if at that particular moment the movie had stopped and everybody went home? What would you be thinking? We'll be thinking, wow, that's the end of the heroes, no more hope. Or maybe you will go back and even say, you criticize the director. What kind of a director is this, leaving such a loose end like that? Right? Because that's what they thought. But actually, the truth is they have not seen the end of the movie. In the end, you all know, the evil people lose. See, the same principle works here for suffering and evil here on earth. We criticize God for the evil that exists, and we want an end to all this suffering and evil. But the truth is that it is not the end of history yet. The loose ends will be tied up one day. The Bible says that day will come, and we can stand on that promise when sickness and pain and everything will be eradicated, and people will be held accountable for the evil that they have committed. So what's delaying God? Think about it this way, I think He's waiting for more people to trust in Jesus and spend time with Him. You see, even the delay is an act of love for all of us. I mean, imagine, if God had come to eradicate sin and to judge evil 25 years ago, today I'll be in hell. I won't have the promise of going to heaven. And that's what 2 Peter chapter 3 verse 9 tells us. The Lord is not slow in keeping His promise, as some understand slowness. He is patient with you, not wanting anyone to perish, but everyone to come to repentance. To me, that's evidence of a loving God that cares so much for you, for me, and for many more people to be with Him in eternity. My last thought with you is simply this, of all the four. Bitter or better? Sometimes we can look inwards and we can turn bitter, or we can look upwards and turn to God for peace and courage. I don't know whether when we were doing worship in song, I thought the songs were excellent choice that remind us on how we can handle our sufferings now. Look up to a God who loves us unconditionally. I have seen cases where the same suffering afflicts two different people. One becomes bitter, rejects God, and he becomes hard and angry. But the other turns to God and is transformed into a compassionate and loving person who reaches out to help other people as well. I am sure you have seen such examples in your life. See, one example is this lady called Joni Eareckson. I'm sure you've heard of her name. Right, in 1967, when she was a teenager, she dived, she was going swimming and she dived into this lake where it was really shallow. And because of that, she hit her head on the bottom and she became paralyzed, quadriplegic, paralyzed from the neck downwards. She couldn't move at all. But you know what? The accident did not make her bitter, it made her better. She now sits on a U.S. State Department Committee task force that champions the cause of the disabled in the United States. She has written many books where she points people to God and how God can also use disabled people and how God has made her fruitful despite her disability. In one interview, she said, theologically this is not correct, but I hope that when I go to heaven, I can bring my wheelchair along. Because she wanted to tell Jesus this. She said, do you see that wheelchair? She was going to tell this to Jesus. You were right when you said in this world we would have trouble. Because that thing was a lot of trouble. But the weaker I was in that thing, the harder I lean on you. And the harder I lean on you, the stronger I discover you to be. It never would have happened had you not given me the bruising of that blessing of that wheelchair. Joni Eareckson. Bitter or better, the choice is ours. Again, you see, it's free will. I have seen people, pastors, quarrel with their church, and then they end up, not just walking away from the church, they even walk away from their faith, they walk away from God. But Joni was not like that. See, all suffering has the potential for good. Not all, of course, will benefit and learn from suffering. But it is our free will to decide. As a Christian, I can choose to run away from God, or I can run towards Him. Like just now, one of the songs reminded us, Jesus said in John chapter 16, verse 33, these things I have given to you, I have spoken to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but have courage. I have overcome the world. When we heard, Jesus offers us two things, peace and courage. Peace to deal with today, and courage to face what will come tomorrow, so that we can keep on going. So you see, in this life, we will face trials. That's what James tells us, and the Bible is very clear about that. Today we have learned, right? I have shared with you some biblical responses of how we can handle pain and suffering and how we can, But knowledge alone does not make the suffering any less stressful. Suffering is always difficult when you're going through it, when you're right in the midst of it. And all the more so when, you don't see any relief in sight, because you're thinking, wow, the same thing is going to happen tomorrow, next week, and next month as well. Years ago, in my former ministry, there was a time when overnight, suddenly my boss, I don't know what happened to him or what I did, he changed in his attitude towards me. And suddenly nothing I did was right. And he would rebuke me openly before everyone, my subordinates as well. And he would take away my responsibilities and what I did and give it to others. And whatever I did, he would also tell somebody else to do something else with it. And more than that, he won't show his resentment towards me before other people. It's not so bad when your peers and your subordinates resent you. But when your boss does that, it can be hell, because your subordinates also take advantage of you. Right? They make life harder for you by ignoring your instructions and your directives. Because after all, you cannot tell the boss. The boss doesn't care about your opinion anyway. And it was real bad. And at that time, I had just got married. I think only a few months. I didn't tell my wife at first, because I didn't want her to worry about my future. And what made it worse was the fact that he never ever told me what I had done wrong. Because if he had told me what I had done wrong, at least I could have repented, tell him I'm sorry, explain myself or whatever. Or at the very least say sorry, can you forgive me and make peace? No, it did not happen. So what I did, I prayed. I sincerely believed that I had not done anything wrong. And despite what was going on daily, I told myself this: I won't quit. If I am blameless in this matter, God will provide me with another job, even if I get sacked. I faced these challenges for a long period of time. And some people may ask me, why didn't you quit, Pastor Liu, and get another job? I think maybe if I was younger, I would have, But I was 46 years old at that time. And 46 years old, when you're out in the marketplace, there is a kind of a glass ceiling. You can work in McDonald's and all that, but if you want to work in an upwardly mobile job, it's going to be very difficult to find a job like that. And I had just got married. I couldn't just quit anyway. So what I did was I carried out my duties faithfully every day, with the hope that maybe tomorrow he will tell me what we have done wrong so that we could make peace. But throughout that difficult time, I learned one thing. They are what I call grace for the day steps. That help me to alleviate the burden. And today I thought I'd share with some of these thoughts with you. Firstly, I think we can learn from our trials and suffering. There is always something that we can learn. Now, I learned one thing very important that I think is very valuable in my pastoral ministry. I learned that Christian leaders should not use power to manipulate, intimidate, and step on people, especially those who are below them. I learned not to treat my subordinates in the same way that I had been treated. I learned to be sensitive. Not to make others feel small, even when they deserve it. See, there's always something to learn, something to help you grow in character in the midst of our trials and suffering. Next, I learned to count my blessings. See, just now one of the songs that we sang also reminded us to look upwards. See, when we focus on our suffering, we don't see our blessings. The Bible teaches us to be thankful. Thankful always, because that is the key to a peace that will surpasses all understanding that we can have. Philippians chapter 4, verse 6 and 7. And I counted my blessings because just 7 years earlier, I actually wanted to commit suicide, kill myself. And God had delivered me. More than that,